session 2 of our today's conference. Before we move on, however, I think we owe Kongsberg a projection of their little film. Let's hope this time works. Our technical guys, can we put on Kongsberg's video, please?
Are you sure about this?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah! Hello? How's amazing? You okay? Yeah, I feel great. Woo! How's your leg? Oh, let me look. Oh, that'll be fine. I think we just need more balloons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. One small, again, announcement. For those who just came in for this session, maybe, you can follow the program on the special application that was sent to you by email this morning. And also, there's a chosen charity organization, Voice for Autism, for which anyone interested, anyone who wants to, they have representatives outside in the lobby. If you want to make a donation, you'll be most welcome. Now, back to our program. Session 2 is Vessel Automation, Decarbonization, Green Technology 2030 to 2050. And to start us off in Session 2, I would invite Mr. Frank Paleokrassas, Head of Data Governance and Analytics at Bernard Schulte Ship Management, to deliver his presentation on analytics, decarbonization, and digitalization in practice. Mr. Paleokrassas.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me for a follow-up session to the one that we had in Athens a couple of weeks ago. Adonis, I have to apologize because it's going to be a repeat of that presentation. I haven't worked out a new one in the meantime. So, as I was already introduced, my name is Frank Paleokrassas. Bit of background, I'm a marine engineer and naval architect, and I've been working for the Schulte Group for the last 13 years. First starting on the ship owning side and then moving to the ship management side. So, a couple of words about the screen's coming out. Adonis, the screen's coming out a little bit bizarre. Anyway, so a couple of words about the Schulte Group. We are a 130-year-old privately owned company with 3 main verticals. Ship owning, Bernard Schulte brand with 90 ships based out of Hamburg. Ship management side, the part that I belong in, with the management of over 650 ships, 3 main brands, BSM and BSM Crew Services, as well as ProNav, which is specifically an LNG ship manager. Of course, it's a little bit confusing because also we are managing a lot of LNG carriers from BSM right now. Actually, we're the largest third-party ship manager of LNG carriers at the moment. And beyond that, we have the third vertical, which is the maritime services. We've only listed a few here. New building supervision with Schulte Marine Concept, catering with Sea Chef, Waypoint, our port agents, Hamas, our maritime advisory services, and of course, Mariaps, crucially, our software development house. So overall, our group spans over more than 30 locations, as you can see. 450 ships listed there in management, means in full management. The rest, the other 200 that we mentioned before, are crew-managed ships. And we, of course, manage over 20,000 seafarers to make sure that all of this can happen effectively. So, a bit of an overview of the ships under our management. As you can see, we manage all fleet types, all vessel types. So initially it was all the cargo ships. Now we've also ventured into cruise ships and of course some more specialized ones, as you can see on the screen. So for us, the reason I'm showing all of this to you is that ultimately we need to manage a very, very varied fleet. So it doesn't only have to do with the types of ship that we have in management, it also has to do with the size, it has to do with the age, and of course, because we're a third-party ship manager, it also has to do with the pockets of each of our customers and their appetite for investment. So all of our decarbonization plans cannot be as easy as a ship owner and ship manager of 10 ships that can simply go ahead with a particular retrofit investment, for example. So our main focus on decarbonization, of course, has to be on the system side. And CII is a buzzword nowadays, of course. It's only coming into force in next year. But since we already had the systems and we already have everything implemented from as long as 2018 internally, we thought, okay, let's be ambitious, and our management said, let's try to monitor and optimize CII from a year early. No easy task, but we said, okay, let's rise up to the challenge and have a look at this. So we said, whichever ship rated E in 2021, it should become D. Likewise, all D ships should switch to C, and all C and above ships should remain where they are or even improve a little bit. And this is an overview of what our fleet looked like in 2021. Quite where you'd expect. So how are we doing in 2022, 9 months later? Hardly any difference, right? So, and it just shows to me two things. First of all, the importance of getting everyone on board and everybody a little bit aware of what CII means, because I would argue that 90% of the people involved are not really fully aware about what they can really do to impact a CII rating at the moment. So getting everyone on board, getting everyone to understand what they can do is extremely important. But then there is also the question of what can we as ship managers do, as ship managers of non-operating owners. And there's the tricky part. So if we take an owned ship, Hannah Schulte, very typical ship. She is 15 years old, managed from our office in Athens. She was ordered back in the good times when speed was king, so 24 knots design. And we said, okay, let's have a look at how this ship has traded or what its rating has been like historically. So going back to 2020, this is what we see. So as you can see, there's a steady deterioration trend towards the end of 2021, and suddenly there's a drop. Suddenly the ship becomes better in 2022. And I would very much like to say that this is a success story of how we've been managing our fleet, but it's not really. Anyway, diving deeper into the data, this is an overview of the CO2 emissions of that particular ship. And you can see once again that the emissions dropped dramatically in 2022. And let's not forget that emissions are in direct proportion of the fuel consumed. So what has happened? If we looked at 2020, CII rating was at C. So I've put transport work in there. Unfortunately, one of the fallacies of CII is that it does not take into account the amount of cargo carried, which is our business at the end of the day, but let's let's look at that when CII is revised in 2026. So the ship was traded at 15.8 knots, right? And 2021, it deteriorated further into the D territory. Not a massive change in speed. Actually, the speed dropped a little bit. But overall, if we looked at the annualized trade particulars over there, they're grossly similar. But in 2022, the ship dropped, well, rose to a B rating. So there are two male culprits here, even though we can see that overall the trade particulars are similar. And I do apologize for dumping all this data on you, but I am getting to a point. So there are two main culprits. First of all, it's that the ship traded at an average speed that was close to 2 knots lower to 2020. And that has a severe impact. And of course, speed is going to drop on average as of next year because of EEXI implementation. But it's not, that's something that is beyond our control, right? So the only thing that is within our control, and we did do here, is that the ship was dry docked at the end of 2021. And we took the ship into dry dock and we did a full blast for the first time in the ship's life after 15 years of operation. And of course, that had a detrimental impact. So this is just to say that overall, the CII puzzle is not an easy one for us to solve. We have very few tools that we can use as ship managers. And for us, the main tools, given that we're not ultimately operating the ships and telling them where to go, is analytics. So thankfully, we had the foresight to dive into the vessel performance game quite early. We established, we've been running a vessel performance platform for our entire managed fleet for the last, since 2017 or 18, fully in operation for the entire fleet for the last 3 years. So, okay, I don't want to dive into the details. I don't want to trouble you with all these crazy analytic screens and all the auto-logging graphs and what have you. I just want to point out, 5 main points. So, first of all, we do a digital twin benchmarking. So, contrary to my friends in Kongsberg that mentioned about artificial intelligence and machine learning and what have you, we chose to do things a little bit simpler. So we build a digital twin for every ship that comes into our management using drawings. So this is something that's available for every single ship. Of course, one can argue whether you will be able to achieve something as good or as detailed as with machine learning. This is a big discussion that I don't want to go into right now, but ultimately, for the purposes of our analysis, this is more than enough. So beyond that, we have a targeted and automatically escalating alert system. So when something goes wrong, the stakeholders, say the technical superintendent, gets notified, and if the problem remains, escalates to the fleet manager, and if it continues, escalates to fleet director and what have you. This is extremely important for slow trends. So the last thing that you want to do, because I'm sure that all of you have experience with alerts, is get flooded whenever there is with emails or alerts or what have you, whenever there's an outlier happening, you know, high temperature on cylinder number 5. Who wants to see that, especially in the office side, right? So we're looking at very long-term trends spanning over days, weeks, months. We do have a predictive hull recommendation tool. This is extremely important for us for CII, falling back to the impact that I showed you about good hull performance management. So what we do is we are able to predict, with some machine learning, when a ship will need to, is best to do a hull cleaning, underwater cleaning, up to 6 months in advance. And this is important because, as all operators know, usually the decision to do a hull cleaning is very reactive, and you're running last minute to find a service for hull cleaning somewhere like the Bahamas, and you end up paying an arm and a leg. So this allows you to do a little bit of a planning. Likewise, the other and bigger, perhaps, key tool for optimization is weather routing. So we tried to develop this ourselves. We looked into it, and then after a while basically realized that it's not worth developing internally because there are so many tools, good tools in the market. It would take us too long basically to get there. So what we're doing is we're procuring from the outside and displaying within our system. At the end of the day, for our customers, always the same, and we always make sure that we provide the best service possible. And finally, because we come back to the human element that we're talking about before, all analytics, everything that we see is available both on board as well as ashore, because for sure the people that are managing and have an impact on the ship's operation are not the superintendents, they are the people on board. So this type of transparency is extremely important. But of course, good shore support goes a long way, and we are building our fleet monitoring center in our new building in Kochi. This will facilitate 24/7 monitoring of our fleet and support for whatever needed. But ultimately, when we're talking about analytics, everybody thinks of something like that, you know, trend lines, funny pie charts, and what have you. And for me, this can be a bit of a deluge of information, right? Unless you're technical, unless you're really willing to dive right in there, you're not going to get insights. If you're a fleet manager and you have a fleet of 20 ships, if you need to sort through pages like this to do an analysis yourself to find out where the problems lie, then you've already lost your day, and a million other things need taken care of. So we said, let's try a different approach. Let's make it more interpretable for everyone and accessible for everyone. Everyone in this audience, even people who are not engineers and can have a technical understanding to understand what the analytics are. So we took each of the KPIs in question, and okay, this is not all of them, it's a selection of them, and we put them in one place and we color-coded them. So depending on how each KPI behaves, we gave it a color coding so that we know straight away if it's doing well or not. Going above that, we said, okay, let's group them. So I don't know if you can really see, but for example, on the left, we have 3 KPIs related to hull performance, and we created a weighted average between them and made a hull performance KPI, the one on the left. There, we normalized it so that it's 0 to 100%, so that we know that apart from the color coding, 0 is bad, 100% is perfect. And then we went one level above. We said, okay, 3 areas: voyage performance, machinery performance, and in the middle, reporting quality, because our system is primarily based on manual reporting. So reporting quality counts a lot because, as Kongsberg already said, garbage in equals garbage out. Finally, we put them all together and we arrive at a single score for every ship. This way, everyone who's involved in the company, even someone from finance, even someone from crewing, can understand how a ship is performing. Is it performing well or not? Then they can drill down and find where the problems lie. So already you, from the audience, can see where the 2 red areas are, right? And when we come to fleet management, we're able to have something like this. Okay, we do have a large fleet, and of course these type of tools are extremely available, are extremely important. But here we're able to separate the good from the bad and the ugly. So to say, understand which ones need our attention right away. And we are also able to say that this is the performance of our fleet overall, and then track it over time. But in order to get stakeholder involvement, ultimately, scores are good, but unless it has a direct impact, personal impact, there won't be any traction. So what we said is, let's link fleet performance. So basically, for a superintendent, the score of his 4 ships, for example, with his own performance, and therefore the variable part of his salary. So that definitely gets attraction. But, and going beyond ship performance now, we wanted to see how we can, in a likewise manner, monitor how our ship management runs overall. So this is something I'm working on at the moment. So what we wanted to achieve here is to avoid the blind spots. So if there's someone like myself, technical goon, right? I know only about performance, for example. And maybe because I tend to sit in the technical department, I'll also have a view on how the ship in question is doing in terms of safety, in terms of maintenance, in terms of procurement, because it's generally the same people, same floor, or something like that. But I might have a complete blind spot about what's happening in terms of crewing and in terms of finance. So what we're working on right now, in a similar manner to what you saw with the vessel performance rating before, we're trying to do something perhaps not as detailed, but do something like that on each of the other functions, and finally arrive at a single score for every ship, providing a holistic overview for the managing director, for example, that can right away understand where the problems lie, dig into the ship, why is it only at 57%, then we have a problem with crewing and finance, for example. So going over to the last part of the presentation, and digitalization, the term that was debated before. So we in the Schulte Group have been very lucky because our senior leadership understood the importance of digitalization really quite early. And we invested quite a bit, quite early on, more than 10 years ago, into what we called at the time the Technology Center, Technology Delivery Center of BSM, which eventually branched off into a company that we now call Mariaps in 2015. In the meantime, Mariaps has become one of the largest growth areas of our group. It is it was in that massive map of the 550 supplies, it was there, noteworthy. It wasn't just in one place, it was in several places. And what I can say, our biggest difference with everybody else in that entire panel is that we are a ship manager and ship owner, and we develop it based on our requirements and keep developing based on what is coming. Anyway, so as you can see, Mariaps is no small company nowadays, more than 750 employees, and some pretty big customers in the meantime. So, of course, our flagship product is what we call PAL. It's our ERP. It's the platform on which our entire company runs on, and is, of course, available for third-party sales, hence all the customers that you saw before there. So it's the classic modules that you know from all ship management, you know, your PMS, your accounting, or what have you, but then we have all the niche ones, if you want, on the outside, covering areas as varied as chartering and dry dock and traveling and insurance, for example. But of course, ERP, sales, whoever has ever been involved in these discussions is a bit of a dinosaur as far as flexibility goes. Move very, very slow. And there is an urgent need at the moment from the market for decarbonization solutions. So we thought, okay, it's of course well and fine to offer everything that I showed you before in terms of vessel performance within this platform, within the CRP, but we said let's break it off into a separate standalone product. And this is the product that we call SmartOps. Understandably, I'm quite heavily involved with its marketing, so if anybody is interested, please let me know. I can go into much deeper detail than what I showed you before, of course. Beyond that, electronic record books is another standalone solution. My colleague Nick, who's sitting in the audience, is actually running it. And Nick, I think I have to apologize because the slide's a little bit outdated. I think we got a few more flag approvals in the meantime. Anyway, so electronic record books is, of course, a digital record book solution. Covers everything that you see here, there on the left. But the critical difference here is the integration that we have with the rest of the system, with the rest of PAL, right? So we talked about before, again, about our crews and how we need to minimize the amount of work that they need to do. So what we are moving towards here is having a single point of entry into the electronic record books, which then feeds into all aspects of PAL wherever possible, and from there on into analytics, for example. So it's single point of entry. We're not quite there yet, but it's, of course, moving into that direction. Finally, a project that, well, is close to my heart and I'd like to mention it. It's with an outside partner that we call Signal. It's not an internal development. Signal is a company that started from the airline industry. They worked with Virgin Airlines, and they chose us basically to do a first pilot in the maritime industry. So what they do is, in our case anyway, to make it a little bit more applied, they use behavior economics and some pretty clever psychological tools to make the users, meaning our people on board, of course, our crews on board, to improve the performance of the ships, not because of carrot, i.e. bonus, or stick, as we very often hammer at them, but rather touch upon the intrinsic need to feel better by improving ourselves. And it goes a long way. In some cases, our crews do get some non-monetary bonus, in which case it is some funds, for example, to donate to a cause of their choosing. So in our case, what we did is the Signal system sat on top of our analytics. So we monitored two KPIs, one for the chief engineer and one for the master. The masters looked at overconsumption, of course, and the chief engineers at the efficient running of the auxiliary engines. In both cases, we did a pilot of 20 ships, and there was a noticeable and verified positive change. I'm not able at this point to divulge on the exact figures, but I can say that the change was, of course, noticeable, and now we are proceeding further to install more ships. And in the meantime, this has generated a lot of interest across the industry, so I would say watch this space. Which ultimately brings me to the end of my presentation, and I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Paleokrassas. Apologies for putting the accent wrong on your name when calling you up to the stage. Any questions for Mr. Paleokrassas? There's not been any questions on the electronic system. No, thank you very much.
Thank you.